broken trust. I sit near the window and watch the street. The sun is warm on my face. I see children playing and hear their happy voices. It makes me smile, but my heart feels heavy. I remember a story from many years ago. It is my story. When I was young, I lived in a small town. I worked in a shop, and life was simple. Every evening, I came home to my wife. She had a beautiful smile, and her eyes were full of light. I loved her more than anything in this world. We had a small house with a little garden. She grew flowers, and I made tea for us in the evenings. We would sit outside, drink tea, and talk about the future. I believed we would be happy forever. She was my wife, my friend, and my world. I also had a best friend named David. We grew up together and shared everything. He was like a brother to me. David often came to our home. He laughed with us, told jokes, and joined us for dinner. I trusted him with all my heart. But one day, I began to notice small things. My wife smiled more when David was there. They whispered to each other when they thought I was not listening. I told myself it was nothing, but deep inside I felt a shadow in my heart. One evening I came home early from work. The sky was still bright and the air smelled of flowers. As I walked to the door, I heard voices inside. I stopped and listened. It was my wife and David. They were talking softly. I could not hear every word, but I felt something was wrong. Their voices were gentle, almost too gentle. Then I heard my wife laugh in a way I had not heard for a long time. My heart began to beat fast. I stepped inside, and they both looked surprised. David smiled and said, "You are home early." My wife quickly went to the kitchen. I said nothing. We ate dinner together, but the room felt different. The laughter was gone, and the air felt heavy. I could not eat much that night. After David left, I asked my wife if something was wrong. She smiled and said, "No, you imagine things." I wanted to believe her, but my mind was full of questions. That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake, thinking about every small thing I had seen. The next days, I watched them more carefully. I saw more signs, quick looks, soft smiles, quiet talks. I loved my wife, but I also feared losing her. I did not know what to do. My heart was full of love, but also full of doubt. One afternoon, I decided to come home at a different time. I wanted to see what happened when I was not there. I walked slowly to the house and opened the door very quietly. The living room was empty, but I could hear voices from the garden. I went to the window and looked outside. My wife and David were sitting close together. They were talking and smiling. David touched her hand, and she did not move it away. My heart felt like it stopped. I wanted to shout, but no words came out. I stepped back and sat on a chair. My hands were shaking. I thought about all the years I had loved her. I thought about the trust I gave to David. In that moment, everything felt broken. I felt like a stranger in my own home. When they came inside, I acted as if nothing had happened. I could not tell them what I saw. My voice would not work, and my heart was too heavy. That night, I stayed awake again. I listened to the quiet house and wondered what I should do. The next morning I looked in the mirror. My face looked older. My eyes looked tired. I told myself, today I must learn the truth, but I did not know if I was ready to hear it. That evening I asked David to meet me at the cafe in town. I wanted to talk to him alone. We sat at a small table near the window. I ordered tea, but my hands were shaking. He looked at me and smiled as if nothing was wrong. I looked into his eyes and said, "David, is there something between you and my wife?" His smile slowly faded. He put down his cup and stayed quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We didn't plan it. It just happened." My heart felt like it was breaking. I asked, "Do you love her?" He looked down at the table and nodded. I felt pain in every part of my body. This was my best friend, the man I trusted like a brother. And now he was telling me he loved my wife. I left the cafe without finishing my tea. The streets felt cold, even though it was summer. I walked home slowly, thinking about my life. I thought about trust, love, and how quickly they can change. My heart felt heavy, but I knew I had to speak to my wife. When I reached home, she was in the kitchen. I stood in the doorway and said, "We need to talk." She looked at me with eyes that showed both fear and sadness. I knew this conversation would change everything forever. We sat at the table in silence for a long time. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Finally, I said, "I know about you and David." She looked down at her hands and did not answer. My heart was beating fast, but I waited. After a moment, she whispered, "I didn't want to hurt you." Her voice was soft, but her words cut deep. I asked, "Do you love him?" She closed her eyes and nodded. It felt like the room became smaller. I could hardly breathe. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting and the sky was red. I thought about all the years we had shared, the laughter, the dreams, the plans for the future. All of it felt far away now, like it belonged to someone else. She came closer and said, "I'm sorry." I wanted to be angry, but instead I felt empty. I knew I could not make her love me again. Love cannot be forced. It must come from the heart. And her heart was with David now. That night I could not sleep. I looked at the ceiling and thought about what I should do next. I realized I had to make a choice. Hold on to the pain or let go and start again. The next morning, I packed a small bag. I told my wife I was leaving. She cried and asked me to stay, but I knew it was time to go. I needed to find myself again. I needed to heal my heart. I walked through the streets of our town. Every corner had a memory. Some made me smile, others made me sad. I realized that life is not always what we plan. People change, and love can change too. I took a bus to another city. I found a small room and a simple job. At first I felt lonely, but slowly I began to meet new people. I learned to smile again. I learned to enjoy the small things, like a warm cup of tea or the sound of rain. Now, many years later, I sit by the window and tell my story. I do not hate my wife or David. They taught me something important. Love is not about keeping someone. Love is about letting them be happy, even if it is not with you. I am an old man now, but my heart is at peace. Life goes on, and so do I. My story is not about loss. It is about learning and finding myself again